Start the recording. So welcome to all of you to our Zoom meeting. The last time I found out that some of you were on and you went off, and then we ended up with more than 25 people on, so they bumped you out. So I spent some money and got a program that allows me to have 100 people on.
Wow.
That really sounds like a lot of fun. So anyway, everyone should be able to get on. What we're going to do tonight is a couple things. We're going to spend time particularly around the interview and what that is all about. We're going to tie it into, hopefully you've been keeping up with the Moog, the material that he has been doing. Also, you will notice that I added a new dialogue interview along with the one that we have now. I think if I switch screens, oops, maybe I don't have to do that. Hang on one second. I don't want to get you all seasick. This is whoops, I guess I am. Can you see this screen?
Yes.
Okay, so you're able to see. So that's the one I've given you. And there is a new one that I just added. And this is called the Presencing Institute Dialogue. Let me scroll down a little bit. Dialogue interview, which is more of an updated version of this one that I put together actually a couple years ago. If you've been downloading material from the Moog, he just put out the source book for the Moog. It's about 50-some pages long. All the activities are in it. So what I did was I copied the section on the dialogue interviews for your interviews that are coming up. And it's pretty close.
Welcome to Zoom. Please enter your meeting ID followed by the pound or hash button.
Okay. All right. So I
if you've joined via a computer, enter your participant ID followed by the pound or hash sign.
All right.
You are in the Zoom meeting now. There are over 10 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
Cool. Colleen, welcome aboard.
Hello. My computer speakers weren't working.
So, okay, well, that's good. Not that it isn't running, but that you're aboard. So, so you should have both of these. I did post this and added it to the section on the interview in 4. So you can look at both of these. I like how he did the update a little bit, but basically we're following the same process. The only good thing is that he added in an example of an interview. So what a person was doing, etc. So I think this, is another format that you can use. Basically, this material here that I'm showing you right now is the same that is in this one that I put together a couple years ago, the Theory U toolbook. So either one will help you greatly in doing this interview process. Now, what I'm going to suggest, if possible, I see most of you have yourselves muted, except Colleen, you can't, I don't believe, with the telephone, but that's okay. So just be careful of, drinking or eating, because it will come across on the telephone. It's very weird. So let me, I'm just going to take you through this interview process, because a lot of you have been sending me the names of the person that you will be doing the interview. And I'm also going to rerun, in case you did not see this video related to the German doctors that they, and medical people that they interviewed. And I'm going to run that video. It runs 12 minutes again, in case you did not see it, because I think it's a perfect example of what I'm hoping you will get out of it. So basically, when we look at, this interview process with Theory U, remember what we, oops, let me go back here for 1 second. I knew this would probably happen if I did it this way. So let me move it this way. So basically what we're looking at is, and I think this is the important component that I want you all to understand, and it's very important, particularly if you've been following and doing the activities, such as the journaling process right now, in any of the videos that you might have been watching, with this new week, talking about what this is about in terms of active listening. But the important thing is, and as researchers in this course, one of the things you need to understand is how to do an interview level that will allow the people who you are interviewing or researching to allow their stories to emerge. So this is the activity of why I'm having you do this. And I want you to spend a lot of time particularly thinking about this process as you're going through it, and follow the procedures that are outlined both in the one I gave you and also the second one I just put together. Because what you're looking at is this, what you see right here that Otto's been talking about, is that really the quality of awareness that we have about ourselves and the people who are in the organization in which we work in is probably the most critical thing in understanding the possibilities of where we can go in the future, but more important for you as a leader. So when you look at what I have there, that the success of any leader really depends upon not what you really do in terms of your actions or how you do it, but where it comes from in terms of you. So you will see he has this week the activity where have you do a journaling activity to really designed to get you to go deep into who you are and what you believe in, etc. So if you went through that journaling video last week, he was asking a whole series of questions of you that was designed to get you to write down what your thought processes are and what you're feeling about. Because this to me is probably the most critical component of your doctoral work in understanding who you are as a leader, but more importantly, when you finally determine what your research will be, the ability to get into this inner place of who you are will help you greatly in understanding the issue that you will be attempting to research. So this concept is rather important. And then again, just to go through this, as he talks about, this field of attention is extremely important to understand and to keep in mind. And I'm going to tell you, when you do your interviews of your individuals, the danger that you have to really begin to focus on is, one, your own self, about how you perceive an interview of what it is, and also how the person who you are interviewing perceives it. Because this is a different type of interview. And as I said to you, your colleagues from past years have found this an extremely difficult task once they got into it. Because what you're really working from is to try to really suspend all of your judgment about the individual and the assumptions that you have about that person and the job, so that you can truly listen to what they are saying to you and to be able to guide the field so that they themselves can go deeper into their sense of who they are. And I'll tell you right now that some of the people you're going to interview are probably having their own minds right now. This is going to be an interview. I have a doctoral student, they might work for me. This is some assignment that some professor gave them to do. And all right, I'll take my, half hour and, just answer the questions that they ask me. So you got to be careful about that, because that's what a lot of time are going to happen, because when you ask to interview someone, they will develop their own set of assumptions of what it means. So your ability to get them to get into their own zone of attention, to understand the sense of getting them to go a little bit deeper into who they are, will be your task. And so that's what I want you to I'm going to use the word struggle with, because it many times it is a struggle, because I think most of you, and I'm going to make this assumption based upon past experience with students, is that you're just thinking, well, I'm going to do this interview, I'm going to ask them questions and they're going to answer it. But when you look at that handout that I've given you, both of them, you will see that the types of question you're asking them is actually to get them into understanding their field of attention in how they carry out their function and their role as a leader.
Okay, Dr. Gould, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, are the questions provided in the handout by you, or we are going to provide our own questions? You're
going to make your own questions. I've given you in the handouts some sample types of questions, but they're up to you, because this is a learning experience for you to begin to understand how do you ask the type of question that gets them to tell their story, and how you learn to suspend your assumptions, particularly if it's a person you're working with or work for. So you're all going to have to deal with that. But the question design is up to you. I've given you in Otto's material there, it's giving you some examples of how to think about that. And when we look at this video in a couple minutes again, you'll see when he was talking to the people related to the doctors in Germany, it might give you a sense of the type of questions that you might want to ask. So you don't need to run the questions by me. What the activity here is for you to experiment with the questions in a way that exemplify this idea of letting go, so that you can hear what someone else is saying. And the best way to understand that is going to explore it and play with the ideas on what that means. Okay, is that okay with everyone? Just, as you think through that process. So that, this isn't something, well, I'm going to grade it and this is an A or this is a B. No, this is an experience for you to begin to explore and to learn how to develop questions that will lead to a generative conversation. So there's no right or wrong answer to this. But there are processes that you need to be aware of and develop your own attention. Okay?
Yes.
Dr. Gould?
Yes.
Is this something that we can do over the phone, or is that not?
Yeah, you can do it over the phone.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a, it talks about that on how to do it over the phone. The best suggestion, obviously, is face-to-face, because you get that connection. Now, the other possibility is do it with Skype, because at least you can see the person. So, if you have that possibility, see if you can do Skype. The preferred way is to do a face-to-face, because you get the sense of the field then. Whereas if you do it over the phone, and there are, examples in there on how to do the phone conversation, the only thing is that you lose that face-to-face connection. But it's okay. I mean, if that's the way you have to do it, you have to do it that way.
And then in which way are we going to present it to you after the interview? How are we going to present it to you?
Okay. The way you're going to do that is I'm going to give you a couple options. Okay. Because when you watch this video in a couple minutes, I'm going to show you of Otto talking about how he presents all the data that they got from talking to the German people and their perceptions with the doctors, etc. So you can do it as a written form, as a journal, what you've learned, what people are saying, or you can do it as a video. Do it as a YouTube video. Create a video. get into a conversation and talk about what did I find, show some of the quotes that might emerge. So as we look at the video of Otto, when he's talking about that German healthcare issue, that is a way of doing it. So you can write it out, you can do an MP2 as just an audio presentation, because what I want to fight, what's more important about this activity is your ability to begin to understand as you look at this particular slide, to begin to get to level 3 and possibly level 4 in the conversation. And your skill of a lot of times bringing your interviewee from level 1 to level 3 will be the type of skill I want you to really begin to explore. Because I'm telling you right now, most of the people you're talking to probably already have a mindset of what this is, so they're downloading their own perception of what they think it is, and how the normal routine of a student in a program asking them questions. Well, what you want to do is see how you can change that and get them to go deep into who they are. Now, again, this is a learning experience. I mean, it's same with me. Doing it is not, it's taken many years for me to, even begin to understand it. Whereas if I'm listening to conversations, I literally can understand now, because this framework has become so much part of my thinking when I'm listening to people. I know when we're at level 2 or level 3 or level 4 in a conversation. So this is your beginning foray into it. But you're doing it because it's an important skill to become a good researcher, particularly in the qualitative field. So that's what I want you to think about. And again, don't worry about getting this right. This is not a right or wrong process. It's a process to help you to explore your ability to do that. And the type of feedback I will give and other people can give to you will be around that. Because the way I think I'm going to do this is, as you give me the presentations, I might share them with your colleagues so that we can use these as ways of understanding how we perceive the conversation using the levels of conversation. Okay, so it's going to be fun actually for you, but it's something that I want you to to truly walk away from this as a learner and be able to use this going forward. Whether you're a classroom teacher, you work for a company, or you're a superintendent, or you're a building principal, or whatever you are, this is to learn to do that type of dialogue. Okay.
Yes. Dr. Gould, I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
I have someone and they're going to have to be a phone. And I was wondering, could I maybe interview 2 people and then sort of see how my skills may have progressed, or how it was different or similarities, and just compare the 2 and maybe try to find a face-to-face around Philly as well?
You want to do a lot of work, don't you?
Well, no, I mean, if they're only, I mean, I think it's a great opportunity to interview people, period.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking, like, one of them is a phone, and I would like to kind of see the difference between how it operates when I do it face-to-face.
Yeah, okay, you could do that, but that's not the purpose of this. But afterwards, that's something you might want to do.
Okay.
What I'm trying to get you to do, though, is if you can do the face-to-face, I recommend that. If you can't, okay, see if you can do it through Skype at least. But if you can't do that, all right, you're going to do a telephone. So the first learning curve here is to understand what it's like to get a person to go down this side of the U for you, go down the left side. So how do I move a person from their habitual way of talking to maybe getting them to notice some things that they're saying, to the point of where I am really developing empathy for what they're saying, because I can feel myself in their shoes. So that's what all of you are attempting to experience. I doubt very little of you will get to level 4 at this particular point. And that's not the purpose of this, to get to 4. I mean, if you do, that's going to be a really, really cool experience, but I doubt it.
Well, if Jennifer is going to be interviewing all these people, she can take mine too.
I just wanted to do 2 people and compare the difference between how you're able to have that conversation, if there's any barriers that exist, and there are, but like I wanted to experience like the face-to-face versus the...
Well, you can keep doing it. There's nothing stopping you from doing that.
Right.
Okay? Because you know that's and actually what hopefully will emerge out of this. So, for example, let me tell you what happened yesterday in D.C. We were going around talking a lot about who we are. We had people there who were independent consultants. We had people there who worked in the government, and we had a couple lawyers. It was kind of an interesting process. And what happened was, one person was talking about their relationship with their boss, and that this person does a phenomenal job. I mean, she is really good, really focused, collects data, is a great worker. But the problem she started talking about is her boss doesn't give a hoot or holler about that. All her boss cares about is that she makes her look good. Now, what was interesting about it, and I was sort of doing it myself, a lot of conversation was around downloading, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you do this? Until a gentleman who was on Zoom came in and said, whoa, wait a second, we need to be really empathetically listening to what she's saying. And he dropped into some questions to her that were really at that level of the open heart. Really, what are you feeling about this in relationship to her as you're trying to do all this work? And it just changed the whole dimension of the field of the 9 people who were in that room. And what made it interesting was it was the guy who was on Zoom watching and interacting with us that really picked up on that. So what I'm getting at is I want you to really do this as an activity to really focus in on where that person is talking from. Is it really downloading, or are they kind of getting into level 2? And you're going to try to see if you're able to get them into more of an empathetic listening process on your side by asking them questions that are designed around open heart. Now, that's the theory behind this. So whether you're able to do that is, you're going to find out. But it's important to understand that. And as I said yesterday, that experience there really got me starting to think about that whole interaction and kind of my own journaling about what happened yesterday, about how particularly highly educated people have a hard time getting past open mind in conversation. Because everybody was coming from their point of view. As a consultant in neurosciences and all these things, it was kind of interesting. And it took that person who was not in the room to really begin to ask the open heart question about, I'm really feeling something, about you in relationship to your boss. So that's what I'm saying, you're going to start playing around with as you begin to explore this. And that's why I don't want you to get into this sense that you got to do something right and it's got to be perfect. No, the way you're going to then present it to me, would be better for you to do it as maybe a conversation using Audacity or doing a video with YouTube or something of that nature, where you're really able to express what you're learning from this. Now, you can write it if you want. I don't care, if that's your modality. The method, though, is for you to really begin to understand how you're understanding going down the U. Okay?
Yes, and doesn't matter who we choose to interview. Does a person have to be a leader of an organization, or we can choose to interview our co-workers?
I'm trying to get you really to, and a lot of you have sent me in the names of the people you're interviewing. I'd like you to really try to interview someone who is in a leadership position or above you in the organization, as opposed to a coworker.
Okay.
Because what you're trying to really tease out here is the source of their leadership.
All right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So now, if it's impossible to do that, so for example, if you're an independent consultant and you don't have anybody, then yeah, you can interview some people who might not be, in that because you run your own company.
Yeah.
But then again, you could talk to yourself and then use that as
I have two choices that are emerging for me, and should I pick someone that's going to be easy to get down to the level 4, or should I choose someone that might be more challenging? I mean,
well,
I have
you know what I'm going to say.
Do the hard one, right?
Yeah, well, but again, the question, so you've already made up your mind. One's going to be hard and one's going to be easy.
Right.
So you're making assumptions about that person automatically.
Well, one's the COO of a tech company, and one is someone who runs a generative conversation dialogue consulting firm.
Well, that's a pretty interesting combination there. And actually, I think the harder one might be the one who does the consulting.
Maybe. Well, yeah, I mean, I know I emailed you, but my coaching circle, I've met an amazing woman who I could interview who runs a consulting firm in Scotland. So I just don't know. Anyway.
Well, whatever. Any of you, the idea here is for you, find out. I mean, you're going to learn from this. This is not the end all of end all. So, whatever your choice is, you make the choice and you go with it, and then find out what happens. So that's the point. But again, what you're looking at is this. I want you, to look at what Otto shows. These levels of interview, but more importantly, it's the levels of listening that are very critical. As you go through the process. So the purpose then is a conversation an individual conducts with the key person who they're looking at. So it really allows you to step into the shoes of that individual. So you need to, in one aspect, is see how you can get to the empathy level. That's what you're shooting for. To get to that level that you can empathize with them no matter what they do. And it could be a coworker then, if you think about it. But what I'm trying to look at right now is utilizing a person who's designated as a leader, so that you can reflect then upon what this leader perceives it to be in relationship to your own developing leadership style. Okay?
Dr. Gould, I have a question.
Okay.
I'm in a system right now where I'm having a lot of trouble, and I'm finding myself doing a lot more absencing than presencing anyway as I go through Otto's work. And I'm wondering if I should look at some of the people that I have a hard time with as leaders that I don't understand and maybe interview someone in that position to try and change my perspective, or do you think I'd be going in with too many assumptions?
Well, that's an interesting one. So instead of me answering that question, what do some of your colleagues feel about that?
I don't know, guys.
Kathy, you and I have talked before, and I think we have similar situations. I have stayed completely clear of anyone within my organization, and it's just been sort of that gut feeling for me. because I feel very absent in my workplace right now. And again, we both are in high schools, and it's a little dysfunctional, I think, where we are. So that's just my perspective, because I feel like I have not been able to let go enough to, I think, interview somebody in my own organization without judging. I think that voice of judgment and cynicism is just going to affect whatever I do with my interview. So I've stepped completely out of there. I'm looking to go far away from my work as possible, but that's me.
Right. Because I was wondering if maybe it might work in the other direction, where maybe it'll help me be less cynical if I could interview them and maybe try and empathize, but try being the operative word.
Any other advice?
I think that it all depends on how open you are to it. If you're open to it, then you may be able to have that interview and be able to obtain a different perspective, but you have to be open to it. So only you can kind of tell whether or not you're open to that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think, hi, it's Carrie. I think it all depends. I go with your gut, because if I'm kind of in an in-between the same way, and I'm not sure if it could help or hurt, but it really depends how tough the situation is. Like, if it's really tough and really hard, then, and your gut instinct is like, this is going to be a disaster, but it sounds like you think it might be a good thing. So it seems like your gut's pointing you into try, because even if it is a disaster, but you tried and you were trying it, at least you understand like kind of the process, and you might get a different perspective on them too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then again, it might just totally reinforce your assumptions.
Yeah, it could.
And then she proves herself right.
I was thinking, the first one that jumped into my mind was the voice of fear, because you think about this, and let's say the problem you could face is in that type of situation is getting into a debate, and that could happen very naturally because of your own assumptions that you're bringing into the field. But it would be interesting if you're highly aware of it and you're controlling that, because you're conscious of your attention, that you're not going to let it happen. But the problem is it's the intensity of your discontent within that environment that could overcome that, overwhelm you. So yeah, I would be careful of that, to tell you the truth.
Dr. Gould, and besides a voice of fear, I think downloading will also play a part. Since she has already formed this.
Okay, girl.
I think she should get
Okay. So, did we lose somebody? All right. So, but that's something, as I said, you need to really begin to look at this, because when you look at this slide here that I put together for you, is that really what these fields of conversation are all about is that you're going to see if there's a possibility that it's possibly to get down to a generative dialogue that really allows for a lot of reflection. So the other key all of you have to deal with, and I just thought about that when I just looked at reflection, is do not be afraid of silence in the interview. Okay? Let it have, if it's there. I will guarantee you, if you are highly aware of it and know how to understand what the silence is, I will guarantee you that the person you interview will make some statement about that. Meaning, oh, well, yeah, I better say something because it's quiet, or something like that, which is a normal response because we have a very hard time dealing with understanding what silence is all about. That actually, if you listen to Otto and in any of the reflective conversational types of approaches, whether it be Edgar Schein or any of these people, silence is probably one of the most important parts of a conversation. Because what it does is it allows the individuals in that conversation time for reflection and thinking together, which then all of a sudden something might pop up and people say, oh yeah, wow. Okay? So that, yeah, I'm glad we saw that. That's a danger you have to be aware of. Don't feel you have to say something because there's no conversation going on.
Dr. Gould, but do you believe that when that silence is happening, that both parties are actually reflecting and thinking, or are they just too focused on the silence?
Well, it depends. I mean, obviously all of you will know what it's for, right? But, you know, so.
Well, sure.
But the other person might not. And actually, to tell you the truth, if they begin to ask a question, well, I better say something because it's silence, there's nothing wrong with you saying, you know, actually in good conversation, silence is good because it gives us a chance to reflect upon what we're hearing from each other.
Okay.
So that's a good lead-in because, you know, remember, the questions that you create, and you'll see the recommendations in both the handouts that I've given you, those questions are more or less designed to get the field started. But a good interviewer, you know, like you think about it like a Mike Wallace or any of those people, you know, Leslie Stahl or any of those people who are pretty good at interviewing. The key there is to understand the silence, to allow it to become an avenue to go deeper into whatever the conversation is about. Because that's what we're trying to get. So when you look at that field of conversation that I have behind that, you know, that level 4 collective creativity is really what you want to get to on many levels. You can do that in terms of yourself. That's what the journaling's all about. But you can do it with two individuals, you know, talking like, you know, I would think most of you might get to level 3. I doubt any of you will get to 4, but then you might. I don't know. But use this chart, that field of conversation, to help you in your own mind to have it embedded there. So when you go into the conversation, you're constantly checking your attention to where you think the level is of the conversation. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So then, you know, basically the process then is identify the leader who, you know, is relevant to you. And that's, I'm asking you to do a leader, however you define who that is. And then, but before you meet the interview, allow for some quiet preparation on your part. Allow yourself to do some of those activities that Otto has you doing, where like sitting straight up in the chair, your feet flat on the ground, concentrating starting from your head down, thinking about your heart, your breathing, think about open heart, open mind, think about your feet connected to the ground, to the earth, think about your mind expanding outwards. So these things that come out of meditation are very good in helping you to quiet your mind, to allow yourself the opportunity to, you know, begin to prepare that space. So then during that interview, listen with your mind, listen with your heart, and wide open, take notes and ask questions, you know, spontaneously. You know, there's nothing wrong with taking notes, you know, during that, but ask, you know, is it okay if I do take notes, et cetera, because I like to, you know, journal about this, et cetera, and, you know, that's good. Then right after the interview, make sure you take time to reflect on the key insights and have a journal, you know, as I said, like, you know, just a small book or something, take your notes, write down your impressions afterwards, because that's going to be important in relationship to the way in which you present your findings. All right? Pretty straightforward. And a lot of this is the exact same thing you will do in your dissertation if you're doing interviews. Okay? There's no difference there. So really what you're looking at here then is you know, this create transparency and trust about the purpose. Let the individual know what this is about. And I'd also let them know that you're hoping to create a different type of interview and ask them to one extent to extend their assumptions about what an interview is. Okay? And then suspend your voice of judgment. Because when you're working with one of your bosses, so to speak, I'll use that word, or a leader who you're looking at, is when you're listening to them, you need to guard your own sense of judgment. Like as you're listening to what they're saying in your mind, you're saying, yeah, that's a bunch of crap. Yeah, I never saw you do that. That's what we're talking about, voice of judgment. You honestly have to turn that off, especially those of you who are going to be working with. I loved it in high school when you were saying about, the atmosphere there, or maybe who you want to interview. You need to suspend your own judgment. That is so critical, because if you don't, you're going to miss most of what they're saying, and you're going to get into a debate, either verbally or in your own mind. Okay? So be aware of that.
Dr. Gould,
Yes.
So I wanted to ask a question, because I had a person in mind, and now that I'm listening to you speak, I'm thinking it might be. So the person I was thinking about interviewing has been with my organization for 30 years, but then I was thinking about someone else who actually just came this school year. So she has 1 year versus 30. And when I think about downloading, I'm wondering if it would be more advantageous to talk to someone newer to get the fresher perspective on how she sees our organization as a newer person, or should I go with the 30-year person who has maybe deep rooted views about the organization?
Which is okay, and I was thinking about that, so you're going to ask me, well, which one should you take? Both are okay. But my own perception is the person with the 30 years, depending on how well you are able to get them to stop downloading and get to their source, might give you better insight because they've been there longer. And
okay.
It will also help you to see how good your skills are at this particular point. Because you want to self-reflect after you do this. Because after you do the interview, you need, as I said, sit and reflect upon it and say, whoa, maybe I should have done this, etc. So my sense is you have already told me some of the assumptions you have about that 30-year person. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So okay, and that's there. But the question is, if that person is sort of a source of power within the organization, that they carry sway, then they might be interesting people to listen to, because what you're trying to do is understand who they are. So you can help to get empathy about them, regardless of what you think about them right now.
Thank you.
I hear a sigh there.
That wasn't me.
It was someone else. Oh. So and again, when you look at these principles, so you look at that, suspend your voice of judgment, but look at this third one. This is an interesting one. Access your ignorance. Pay attention to and trust the questions that occurred to you, because ignorance is, good. I think, what wasn't it last class? I had you watch that, who was it? The physicist talking about ignorance. I think that was a TED conversation I had you guys watch in 800. So that's, ignorance is bliss, actually, because what it does is it might help you then to go deeper into finding questions that might help you to develop level 3 empathy with that individual. And then access your, appreciative listening, thoroughly appreciating, enjoying the story that you're hearing. That's where you must silence voice of cynicism and voice of judgment. And what you call that in the parlance of of qualitative research is bracketing. And that's a skill you have to develop. How do I bracket my assumptions so I can hear what a person is saying? And then access your listening from the future field. Focus on best future possibilities. So you can get into a conversation about what are their hopes about the future. What do they see? What possibly could come out of this because of the concept of their role as a leader? And then that last one, leverage the power of presence and silence. Don't interrupt brief moments of silence. Let them just percolate. So these are things that you need, to really think about. And then again, this is in your book and everything. This is another way to help begin to set up a framework in your own mind about what generative dialogue is about, and what you really are trying to get towards is the presencing and flow to emerge. So that's why I said to you, if any of you have ever played on sports teams and you've gotten into the moment or been on a great team that you were working with, that you were developing maybe a curriculum or some project in your work, and all of a sudden everything just flowed together. Why? Everyone was on, just in tune with everything, because that's what presencing and flow is all about. And I'm sure every one of us have had experiences like that in all different levels. The problem is in listening to a couple of you questions you're asking me, is that you're down in that area of reenacting the past, talking tough, debate, clash, my point of view is what is totally correct, and the heck with yours, etc. And then we also do that talking nice, where we never really tell what's really going on. So, we just sugarcoat everything. So these are the components that are extremely important, to the listening process. So any comments, questions right now up to this particular point? Makes sense, or at least you understand the structure of what you're going to be doing?
Yes, Dr. Gould, but I have a question.
Yeah, shoot.
How do you really know or recognize when you transition from number 3 to number 4 level?
Well, the way I think that comes about, and you're going to see that when we get into prototyping, because what prototyping is the ability to create something new out of that energy and flow. Have you ever been on a team, whether it be in the sports arena or some project that you were actively involved in, and man, it just came together? You can't even put words around it, but it happened. And it was so cool because everyone was connected. The flow was there. You could sense it. It felt good.
Yes. In sports, I've had many of those experiences. I was a lot younger, but I had them.
Yeah. And that's what it is.
I have difficulty figuring that out in a work environment.
Well, have you ever worked on a project at work or had to create something at work?
Well, of course.
Yeah. So did you do it individually or did you do it collectively as a team?
No, I manage a team. So It's most of the things that we do are collective.
All right.
But there's a lot of individual effort as well.
Yeah, but the end product is what?
Well, success. I mean, for us, whatever success means, that's a little bit easier when you're managing a team and you're telling them what to do. It's another when you're on a larger team as part of the organization, and then you have all these competing interests and egos, which is what I'm dealing with.
Yeah. Okay.
That is far more challenging.
Yeah, it is, and well, you and I could do an interview right now. but the reason I'm saying that is, and I'm going to play in a couple minutes the 12-minute clip that Otto talked about with the German doctors and looking at the healthcare. And what I want you to think about as you watch that clip is that the question is, as the leader of teams, have you ever experienced a collective sense of the flow and the zone coming out collectively from that team, whatever it was they created or did?
Yes, but things change over time, and I've had that experience, and now the situation is a bit different, and it's been disrupted, and not in a positive way.
Yeah, okay, but what I'm saying is that if you want to know where it is, the question around flow and the question around the experience, you've had that. Now you're beginning to say, well, there's probably some things going on inside the organization that probably are back up at level 1 downloading, or might actually be in the level of absencing, which we haven't gotten into yet. Which, remember, presencing is allowing that future to come in, possibility of creating new ideas. But the opposite of that is absencing. It's where the same old crap keeps going over and over again because we don't know how to not to download and to get into generative conversation. So really what happens is you're really functioning at the bottom level of that chart that you're looking at, talking nice and talking tough, because you're downloading everything, you're debate and clash, and you use power to get the point across. You're going to do it because I tell you to do it because I'm the boss. Same way a boss might say that to you. So it's understanding where those fields are and then beginning to begin to explore the way in which you could create the type of small conversations that get small groups of people to interact that eventually might lead to a broader dialogue within an organization. So it's that's the challenge that we're all faced with. And when you look at what Otto's talking about in terms of Theory U, the complexity of dealing with these issues has to start, one, with understanding myself first. And then secondly, how then do I create an empathetic relationship with other people and begin to form these networks? And it's not easy. I'm not saying that it's an easy thing to do, but there's plenty of examples of large historical movements that started that way. Think about the Berlin Wall. It was amazing how the Soviet Union crumbled. And it was done. Social media had some impact on it at that particular time. So it's our ability to understand, dynamics of the field, but the dynamics of the field have so much to do with the level of conversation and the level of attention of people within that. So as a leader, if you can create an environment that allows people to feel the sense of what presencing is about, because you're encouraging that to emerge, then those organizations will perform way better than organizations that use top-down approaches, et cetera. So, and you look at some of the newer companies and the new models, so you can look at Google, you can look at Nike, you can look at many of these newer organizations that are working off of networks instead of hierarchies. That is some of the things that we have to start looking at. So, Brian, does that help? At least give you something to think about?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much.
So, let me...
Dr. Gould,
yes,
I have a question. How long does the interview need to be? Like, if you're going
16 hours.
Well, the person I'm interviewing definitely could take 16 hours and then... So I'm sure, no one wants to listen to that, but approximately like how long would you recommend?
No more than an hour.
Okay.
Try, limit that. And I'm sure most of the people that you're thinking about interviewing are going to probably be under time crunches. So they're only going to give you maybe an hour. But what might happen, and this has happened to some of your colleagues from other cohorts, they got into it that they were getting close to level 4 because they just got into generative conversations. So who knows? But the rule of thumb is you're looking about an hour.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Thanks.
So can everybody see that black screen that I have up there right now?
Yes.
All right. What I'm going to do is, and this runs for 12 minutes, I want you now, based upon least some of the stuff I've talked about, and you might have watched this before, but I'd like you to watch it again. This is Otto talking about the major conversation that emerged with many people around the healthcare issue in Germany. And I think it's a pretty interesting concept. It might give you a sense of how you want to tackle your particular view. So here we go. Hopefully, if you cannot, I'm hoping that you can hear this. Okay, so let's try it.
A few years back, my colleague Ursula Verstegen and I were working with a German network of physicians. And their question was how to connect deeper and better with the patients. We brought in a group of students, gave them a one-day training in deep listening and dialogue, covering pretty much the material that you covered in the first 2 weeks of the U-Lab. And then we sent them on a journey where they shadowed for a week the physicians, kind of experiencing what that relationship looked like from their angle. And after that, they interviewed 100 selected patients and their 30 physicians with deep listening dialogue interviews, basically listening to their life's story. And then we invited everyone to a feedback session in a local school. 100 of them showed up on a Saturday morning, and we showed them this slide here, and we basically said, look, we read all the transcripts of all the conversations, and here is what we heard you guys describing. 4 different levels of patient-physician relationship. And the first one basically revolves around repairing broken pieces, repairing a defect. And the role of the physician here is that of a mechanic. And here's an example of that. My health issue is that I have a broken part, a defect. The role of my physician is that he is fixing that part. So you hear that in that level of patient-physician relationship, it's just kind of a, transactional. There is not a lot involvement of the patient other than, having the broken part fixed. Then on a second level, we see somewhat deeper relationship, which is revolving our therapy, which really gets into the behavior that is creating these broken pieces or the defects, the health issues. And the role of the physician here is that of an instructor. And here's an example for that. I want my physician to tell me, eat more of this, less of that, work out a little bit. Then on an even deeper level, the third level, we see a relationship that is more based on reflection, inquiring into the deeper assumptions that actually drive behavior and drive health issues. And the role of the physician here is the role of the coach. Here's an example for that. One becomes sick in order to think. When you say you don't have the time, time will be forced onto you by making you sick. When you don't consider life as a gift, then you become sick. And finally, we saw a few examples that we're describing a fourth level of patient-physician relationship. One that we called self-transformation, that really deals with connecting deeper with who we really are. And in that relationship, the role of the physician really is the role of the midwife for bringing forth the new. And here's an example for that. I have been someone who never got sick, and then all of a sudden I had cancer. I had always worked hard and just neglected the fact that I was sick. I went back to work full time, but 2 years later I broke down. After surgery, I learned to talk with my doctor about my disease. I only learned at the age of 58 to say no. I didn't even realize that I lost my identity on the way down. And now, I'm not concerned about my future anymore. Today is important to me. Now. And you feel kind of that with this quote, kind of we even connect and experience a deeper level of connecting to ourselves and to each other. And then we said, okay, so those are the 4 levels that we heard. Now we want you to talk about where you see your own current experience of the system, on which level, and then where you want to see it in the future. And after a while, after people talked in small groups, we gave them dots to vote and to assess the current reality and where they wanted the system to move. With a red dot where they experience current reality, and with a green dot where they wanted the system to move going forward. And here is what they came up with. When they came back and sat down again, we saw this picture. And this picture shows that both the patients and their physicians came up with the same assessment, that current reality pretty much revolves around level 1 and 2, repairing broken parts. And then, in terms of the future that they wanted to create, they also both came up with the assessment. They pretty much wanted to see it revolve around level 3 and 4. When I saw that, facilitating the session, I asked them, so what you just did is that you said that you came up with the same assessment, kind of current reality is here, and the future that you want to create is here on level 3 and 4. So why is it, and you both, patients and physicians, seem to agree on that, why is it that you collectively create results that no one wants, which is level 1 and 2? And why is it that collectively you're unable to actually create the results that you say you do want, which is level 3 and 4? Because after all, in this community, you are the system. The system is not kind of what the people in Berlin or in Brussels are doing to you. You are the system. And in the moment of stillness that followed that question, you could feel how the whole perception of the system, how the whole perception of the field was shifting from one way of seeing the system, which is out there, kind of what the people in Brussels and Berlin are doing to us, to another way of seeing the system that includes myself, and where I realize that the system that we enact in this community really emerges from the choices that I take, kind of from the relationship that I choose to operate from to my patients, kind of to my physician. Shortly after, a man stood up and introduced himself as the mayor. And he said, look, I am the mayor in this community here, and in politics, in local politics, this, and he was pointing to this chart, is exactly our problem. All our attention is going into this here, where the red dots are, level 1 and 2, which is reacting against the issues of the past. And as a community, we are unable to focus our attention and to draw our resources on these levels here, level 3 and 4, that would enable us to sense and shape the future. Shortly after, a woman stood up and said, and I'm a teacher here in this school, and the problem, the issue kind of we have in education today and we have in our school is exactly this problem, which is that all we do today, all we can do in our current educational system is to operate on these first 2 levels, which means we are transmitting kind of dead bodies of knowledge kind of into the heads of our students that after their graduation really isn't that much of value to them. While we are unable to redirect our resources and while we are unable to create learning environments that would allow our students to connect with their own deeper sources of knowing and kind of to strengthen their capacity of sensing and actualizing kind of emerging future possibilities. After she sat down, a man next to me stood up and introduced himself as the farmer, and he said, and this is exactly the problem we have in conventional farming today. So the conventional kind of industrial paradigm of farming is exactly operating on these assumptions, kind of that we see on systems on level 1 and 2, which is you have that the earth is a dead body, basically. You have to put in fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides and so forth. And, you know, it's kind of the dead input-output model that we're operating on. While, you know, as a community of farmers, we are unable to really activate these deeper levels to connect to earth and to the ecosystems, kind of as a living system, kind of that we can co-create and co-evolve with. And so on and so on. So what you see here is a shift. That when people were doing the assessment and reflecting on how they were operating and contemplating the question, where they shifted their perspective from a level 1 and 2 view, which is seeing the system outside, to a level 3 and 4 view, in which you begin, as you turn around the perspective, as you turn around the camera, where you begin to see yourself as part of the system. And that then the mayor goes up, stands up, and, you know, reflects on his practice, and the teacher stands up and reflects on her practice, and the farmer stands up. That's a very typical phenomenon once a conversation is moving into a dialogic space, because all of a sudden you see the pattern, and then once you see the pattern in one system, it's not that difficult to see the same pattern, to recognize the same pattern also in other systems. So that's what we mean with co-sensing. It's an event that allows the system to see itself. Many years later, when we did some interviews with members of this community in order to find out what it was that allowed this community and this network to be that much more innovative and that much more successful in realizing a number of breakthrough innovations, many of them pointed to this event as a turning point in their own learning, in their own journey, that allowed them to connect with each other and with the system in a more direct way, and also to translate ideas into prototypes and experiments with.
Oh, okay, good. It died. That's the end. So let me get over here. Get rid of this right now. So what I hope, and you can go back obviously into the Moog and listen to this, I think this, at least from my point of view of helping guiding you through this process, that's a pretty powerful video of giving you the sense of where you can start or learn to start the generative type of dialogue within your organization by starting with the individual interview and being able to explore the possibilities more so from your point of view, so you can learn how to do that. Because I think what happened as you look at the data that emerged out of that, it was phenomenal material that actually then got, as what, you know, Brian, you were asking, you know, before, how you can get an entire group that once they can see it and have experienced it, can then allow the possibility for futures to begin to emerge. So I think this is the essence of why I'm having you go through this type of process, one, as researchers in a doctoral program, but more importantly, as individuals who work with people on a daily level and have to interact within all types of organizations, whether it be at your work or within your own family. Because remember, as Peter Senge talks about, you know, is that we need to think about systems as, you know, systems is not really the word we want to use. We really want to talk about networks of relationships. And the first network of relationship that we're all exposed to is the family. and then we just move out from there. So I hope that, when you listen to that, and again, you can go back into the Moog and listen to it again, it gave you some insight on how to look at the questioning and to experiment with that questioning. So I'm going to leave it at that point. Any questions or comments at this particular point for me, the good of the group?
Dr. Gould, please, do you have all these slides on Blackboard for us?
These particular ones that I have here, I will post them later tonight or tomorrow morning.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
I should have done that sooner, but I actually forgot about doing it because I wanted to get that other thing to you. So yeah, I'll have these up either tonight or tomorrow morning.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
I have a quick question.
Pardon me?
Sorry, go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
So can you be flexible with the due date of the interview? Because the person I'm interviewing actually can't see me until a couple days after it's due.
That's too bad. Sorry. No, they got to do it on that day or you can't know. Yeah, whatever works for you.
Great, thank you.
And what are we supposed to do that, the interviews?
I said, I don't remember. What was the due date I had? You needed to have to me at least someone who you're doing so I could at least have that in, what was the due date?
I thought you had February the 22nd.
Right, I had it in, towards the end of February. Yeah. But if you run into problems, you need a little extra time, don't worry about it because I'm more concerned about the quality of your presentation. And what I mean by the quality of the ability for you to deeply reflect upon it and to, express it. Again, you have different modalities that you can express it. Brian, were you going to say something before?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the example of the German doctors and their patients and whether or not there was follow-up from Otto on that or how long ago that occurred, and did they change their system? And if not, why not?
Yeah, I think he said they did do the follow-ups, but probably that might be a good question that I don't know if you're into, posting things on the Moog. You could probably ask that question, get an answer to it. I don't know about the total follow-up. My assumption is, yeah, they did because he was talking about some of the things that were coming out, but that wasn't part of the discussion there.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I can post it on the MOOC.
Yep. Why don't you do that? So any other questions for me or each other? If not, then I'm going to stop the recording, and I'll be the last person on, and I'm going to wish all of you a good night. And at any time, again, as usual, if you have any questions or you need some follow-up about this, feel free at any time to get in touch with me. I will tell you, though, next week, I will be in Washington, D.C. the entire week. I'm part of a meta-analysis on a education for sustainability group that the Cloud Institute is running down in DC, and I was asked to be part of that mega analysis. So those of you in Philadelphia, I will be taking the train up Friday at 2 o'clock, and we'll be there on time for class. So my dog will not be sick or anything of that nature this time, and I'll be there. Unless Amtrak has a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's it then. That hopefully I help to at least get you to think about this, what the process is. Again, this is a learning experience for you. You're going to learn, how you can deal with this, and I'll help you and give you feedback, and also have your colleagues give you feedback on this also, because that's what learning's all about. Okay?
All right.
All right, so I will say goodnight to all of you. I'm going to turn off the recording, and I'll have that available in a audio recording because the other